Welcome to the final episode of Bobcat Blitz for the school year. For the first time this semester, we have a different host. I'm Nick Dench. Joining me is an all-star cast featuring the usual host, Zach Daly, Jordan Katz, and the future chairman of QBSN, Kevin Noonan. With the athletic season winding down, Quinnipiac still has two teams in contention in the playoffs, starting with the men's lacrosse team. They're coming off a loss to Robert Morris, and they find themselves playing who but Robert Morris in Smithfield, Rhode Island at Bryant this Thursday. And Zach, I'm going to start with you. What are the chances the Bobcats can actually advance through the NEC and go to the NCAA tournament this year?
You know, everyone's saying that Bryant's the team to beat in the NEC this year, but I think that the Bobcats can beat Bryant. They had a rough game at Robert Morris to end the regular season, but they had to travel all the way out to Moon Township to play that game. It's a 9-hour bus ride. It was a rough go-around, but I do think the Bobcats have a very good chance, definitely to make the finals of the NEC tournament and even advance the NCAA tournament as well. And it's all going to depend on how Gil Connors plays. He is hands down the best goalie in the Northeast Conference. If he's on his game, this team will be fine. And if the Bobcats do match up against Bryant in the NEC finals, as long as the Bobcats can play defense, because you know Bryant's going to win their face-offs, they're the best face-off guy in the country, then I think the Bobcats can beat Bryant. Then they haven't been playing very well the last couple of games of the season, so I do think the Bobcats have a very good chance.
You mentioned that Bryant's excellent in the face-off circle, and that's one of the things that the Bobcats are going to have to do well if they have a chance. If they wind up matching up with Bryant, that's one of the things that they have to do well. You got to be good in the face-off circle. The little things, got to win ground balls, got to get your opportunities to clear when you have them. It's the little things, coming up large on man advantages. It's the little things that this team's going to have to do if they're going to beat Bryant. I don't know if they're going to be able to, but if you talk about three players that need to do well for this team, one of them is Michael Sagal. The other one, it's Sagal, Oppenheimer, and Webster. You got to have some production up front from those. And again, Gil Connors in the net, the ultimate equalizer to any hot team in lacrosse and even in hockey is having a hot goaltender. And if Gil Connors can be on top of his game, Kevin, that to me is the ultimate equalizer.
Well, guys, first of all, Zach, the team had to they flew out to Robert Morris. They didn't take the bus.
It's still a long ride out to Robert Morris.
But I think the team has 0% chance of making the NCAA tournament because you guys are talking about them playing against Bryant. They have to get through Robert Morris first, and this is a team that they lost 9-7 against last weekend to end the regular season. So I definitely think that they have no chance of making the playoffs. But if they were to make the chance, they are going to have to rely on Dylan Webster in the faceoff circle because you can't really set momentum if you don't win those faceoffs. So you win the faceoffs, then you have at least a chance to set up some good offense. So it all relies on Dylan Webster if you are going to have a successful round.
One of the things, though, that they've done better is they've won those close games. They had I believe it was a 13-12 triple overtime win a couple weeks ago, and then they followed it up with an 11-10 victory. So they're getting better in those close games, whereas when they played Robert Morris, they lost that tight game 9-7. Again, Webster's been much better in the faceoff circle, and Gil Connors has been outstanding. So when you have those two things, I can't really give them a 0% chance. I see where you're coming from. I completely agree. It's going to be very tough for them. To me, I think Bryant's going to win. I actually don't even think the Bobcats are going to win. I agree. I think Robert Morris is going to beat them. But I can't give them a 0% chance when you have those things.
Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I disagree with you on winning those close games. Yes, they did win many close games, but in the early part of the season, they were, I believe they got to 3-0 at one point, and then they lost 3 straight one-goal games. And then to end the season, they blew 2 6-1 leads. They had a 6-0 lead against Wagner. It became 6-1, and they ultimately won 11-10 with 1.8 seconds left in the game. And then this past weekend at Robert Morris, they were winning 6-1 again, and they gave up 8 goals, and they only scored 1 more in the final quarter. So they've blown a lot of leads this season, and that's something that concerns me as a spectator.
Kevin, you brought up a great point, and I was going to mention that. They've blown a lot of leads so far this season, and that's something they can't do, especially come playoff time. They had, like you said, they had the 6-1 lead against Robert Morris. But I think it's going to come down to the face-offs. Dylan Webster, I was talking to Tony DiStascio last week, and I said, Dylan Webster, he's like the weather in the face-off circle on the X. He's either really, really hot or he's really, really cold.
Absolutely.
So it depends on which Dylan Webster is going to show up for the Bobcats against Robert Morrison if they make it to the NEC championship game. If Dylan Webster can do what he's been capable of doing this year and win at least 50% of his faceoffs, I think the Bobcats can beat Robert Morris and beat Bryant.
And speaking of Dylan Webster, who do you guys think needs to step up for the Bobcats in order to win this first playoff game, Jordan?
Gil Connors, very simple. Gil Connors has got to have a good game. He's got to be on his mark. He's played well all year, but this defense has a tendency to be spotty. Kev, you alluded to it with the 6-1 lead. I mean, you got to buckle down there. It's that simple. You got to buckle down on defense. You can't allow teams to start running off 3-4 goals in a row. So to me, it's very simple. It's Gil Connors.
I'm going to have to say, instead of Gil Connors, he's had 4 NEC Defensive Player of the Week awards. I'm going to say it's got to be the entire defense because, like you said, they haven't been doing very well. They are very, very young, a lot of freshmen and sophomores. So they've got to step up and stop some of these shots getting through to Gil Connors because Bryant and Robert Morris are teams that can score. So I'm saying it's got to be the back line, it's got to be Pendergast, it's got to be McMahon, it's got to be players like that.
I definitely think that the player you have to rely on your players in the midfield, and I definitely think Dylan Webster is part of that. He's going to be on the X, winning the faceoff, so you win the faceoffs, you control the play. But also, when you're trying to clear the ball, the defense is going to give it to the midfield if they don't throw it long. So if your midfielders can't control the ball and get it back over to clear it, that's where you're going to have the most trouble. So I definitely think Dylan Webster is one player that the Bobcats really need to step up if they want to have a chance to even beat Robert Morris.
And this Bobcats team obviously playing the NEC championship playoffs this weekend. Another team in the NCAA semifinals and possibly finals this weekend is one of the least recognized teams on the campus as they head to Stanford to play in the national semifinal game against Winona State, and this is the women's rugby team. Kev, I'm going to start with you because you follow them most this year. How do you see them doing in the national spotlight?
I definitely think that they have been able to handle the pressure in the spotlight. They haven't gotten too much attention because of, I'm not sure why they haven't gotten a lot of attention, but this is a team that's made it to the national semifinal. I think they can win this whole thing. They've shown that they can step up against these teams they haven't played before. They dominated their tri-state conference competition, blowing out teams by 90 points and Hofstra 130 points. But they've beaten Temple, they've handled Lee, and they've come back against Appalachian State to move on to the national semifinal. So this is a team that can truly head to the national championship, win it. Sure, the travel is going to affect them, but every team is traveling because you have Quinnipiac here from Connecticut, you have Winona State coming from Minnesota, you have Washington State, and you have the University of Buffalo. So it's not exactly like any team's coming from right outside of Palo Alto. So I think the Bobcats are going to be able to handle the pressure this weekend. And the one player that the Bobcats are going to need to rely on is Natalie Costco. She has been the anchor for this Bobcats team, just running over people from the wing. She's truck stick people countless times, and Coach Carlson has told me times where she's stiff-armed people and thrown them 5 to 10 feet away from her. She's just dominated the competition, and that's what the Bobcats are going to have to rely on this weekend when they win the championship.
Jordan?
I agree with you, Kev. I think there's a lot of things that the Bobcats, there's a lot of positives for the Bobcats going into this weekend. First of all, they haven't lost yet. That's to me the most obvious one. You mentioned Natalie Costco, 85 points on the year. She's been tremendous. But Chris Norico has also been fantastic, 80 points. So that's 165 points between just 2 players. And someone that doesn't get a lot of attention to me is Katie Wood. Katie Wood has 60 tackles. That is an impressive number for any school. This team has played excellent all season long. They're outscoring opponents 91-30 in April. And you talk about that. That's two postseason games that they played, and they're outscoring opponents 91-30. That's impressive. So I absolutely think that this team, Nick, can walk into the national semifinal and even the national championship and wind up winning.
I don't know about rugby as much as you two, but I do know there's going to be a lot of pressure on this Bobcats team, and so far they've been able to handle it well. But I think the biggest pressure they're going to have to deal with is not playing in the national semifinals and possibly the national championship game. It's going to be the pressure of they haven't lost yet, and they really can't afford a loss, or else their season's over. So I think that's going to be the big question mark. Can this Bobcats team handle the pressure now that their backs are up against the wall, even if they're coming in undefeated on the year? They've ran over some of the competition. They've come back to beat Appalachian State, like Kevin said. Do I think they can do it? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be easy for this Bobcats rugby team.
Definitely going to be an interesting trip out to California this weekend. We'll be right back after a short commercial break and talk about the 2 teams whose seasons just ended, one of which ending in a matchup in the national championship game. You're watching Bobcat Blitz on Q30. Welcome back to Bobcat Blitz, presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network. The acrobatics and tumbling team just ended their season, winning 2 individual awards before losing to Oregon in the national championship. And Kev, I'm going to start with you. What can this program take out of such a successful season that it's had this year?
Well, I think this program can take a lot of things out of the season because, first of all, they made it to the NCAA National Championship, which is an honor because they had to go through Azusa Pacific, who Coach Marianne Powers said really has stepped up a lot throughout the season. But I think what they showed was they can compete against the best of the best, and that is Oregon. They lost by 13 points earlier this season at a meet in Hamden, Connecticut. So to lose by only 4 points in the national championship is pretty astounding. Sure, they didn't win many of the heats. They only won a heat in the acro portion. They won one heat in the pyramid portion. But the biggest thing they can take away is the team event. They were able to win the team event, beating Oregon for the first time ever in program history. Oregon had never lost a team event coming into this national championship. So Quinnipiac was able to get a big win in that event, and that really shows some good things to come. The Oregon coach was saying after the game, or after the meet, that Quinnipiac really surprised her in that this meet was a sign of things to come in the coming years with the competition between Oregon and Quinnipiac. And Quinnipiac can just take a lot out of this, and it just ultimately helps their recruiting even more, losing some of the seniors on this team. They're going to get a lot of recruits. Coach Powers talked a lot about the kind of athletes she wants to recruit, and I think it's only a sign of good things to come for this program.
You hit the nail on the head, Kevin. You mentioned that they beat Oregon in the team meet, and that had never happened before. That's, to me, the major sign of this national championship game. And the fact that you can rebound after losing by 13 points, where they had a bad showing in the pyramid, and then come all the way back against a team that you really don't have a great chance of beating, but to only lose by four is an incredible accomplishment. Montara Tomasetti is one of the best tumblers on the team, and as a freshman, she had an incredible year. This team is going to have great things this team is going to start great things for this program, and it's going to start as early as next year. Kev, you mentioned with the recruiting class, it's just going to get better for the Bobcats.
I like every point you guys made, but I think something we still have to talk about is what actually hosting this tournament is going to do for the Bobcats. We see coaches from Oregon, Baylor, big-time schools say that they were blown away by the facilities, by the way Quinnipiac organized the national championships. That's going to bring in a lot of attention to the school and to the program. It's going to bring in a lot of recruits. This is a young team. I was looking down the roster earlier. I didn't see many seniors on that team. And like Kevin said, they were able to beat Oregon in the team competitions. So they just proved that they are just on the cusp of doing great things. So I think next year is going to be an absolutely massive year for the acrobatics and tumbling team. As long as they improve in the toss and the acro portion, I don't see any reason why this team can't get back to the national championship.
And acrobatics and tumbling isn't the only team that's up and coming here at Quinnipiac. They are finally ending their season up, and women's golf just finished competing down in Daytona Beach, so a couple teams that are traveling a lot in the NEC tournament. And this team ended up finishing in 7th place, but have 3 of their top 4 golfers coming back next year. And Jordan, how can those 3 help build the program?
It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. They struggled in some areas, guys, that they really need to improve. The first of which is their greens and regulations, specifically on par 3s. You got to make sure if you're that freshman class, Unger, Whaley, and Lambro, you got to make sure that you hit greens and regulation. One of the best was Kayla Ketchinson on the team. She was fantastic in the short game, greens and regulation, sand saves, and she was also the only starter that had a better than 65% of hitting fairways off the tee. That's a big area of concern for me. But there are some positives with this team. Again, bringing 3 of the 4 best players back. Christina Unger had 7 rounds, I believe, where she finished under 80, which is a great sign. And her low was a 73. That's a good sign for this team. Jen Whaley had a 76. That was her low, and under 84 times. So there are some good signs for this team. But if you look at things that have to improve, it's sort of the things that you don't expect the young players necessarily to have right now. Again, being able to save par, being able to make sand saves, two putting when you get on a green in regulation to make sure that you get no worse than par. They averaged 2-3 putts a tournament as a team. That's not good. You got to make sure that you shorten up your short game if you're the Bobcats, if you're this freshman class.
I agree with you, Jordan. I think it's the little things that the Bobcats have to do. Greens in regulation is huge. Making your putts is huge. And I also think next year is going to be a very big year for this team, especially since, like you said, they're returning some of their top golfers. Their top golfers are freshmen, and they're only taking this as a learning experience. So imagine where we're going to be next year, 2 years down the road, and especially their senior year. This is a very, very young, not only players-wise women's golf team, but it's a very young program in general. They've only just started to be able to recruit people. So they're going to be able to bring in new recruits. They see that they have good golfers, that Unger, Whaley, players and golfers like that. And I think that's just going to bring in more recruits, and this team's going to be great down the road. And I know all four of us are golfers, and we wish we could golf like these girls.
Yeah, absolutely. But you said it perfect right there, Zach. The three players that they're returning, their top three, are all freshmen, which gives them 3 more years in the program. So I think that's what's big for the Bobcats. And the only disappointing thing was that they were in 4th place after the second day of the NEC tournament, and they dropped to 7th by the end of the competition. So that was a little bit disappointing to see from the Bobcats. They finished 39 strokes back of 1st place, but Chrissy Younger was the top scorer for the Bobcats, along with Kayla Ketchison. So those two up top, along with Jen Whaley and Taylor Lambro, really leading the Bobcats. And I think, like we said, it's only a sign of good things to come because, like we said, they're all 3 of them are freshmen that are returning the top players. And just another offseason under Coach John O'Connor is really going to provide good things. And they won a tournament in the fall. They won the Quinnipiac Classic in October. So if they just continue to keep improving, they have the confidence moving forward. And I think it's going to be good things to come next season for the Bobcats golf team.
Yeah, one of the big areas that they actually were very solid in, the 3 freshmen, they combined for 49 birdies, which is a good stat to have. Replacing Kayla Ketchinson, to me, though, is the big deal. Kayla Ketchinson was solid in almost every area on the golf course. And to me, the person that's going to have to step it up is Chrissy Younger. Chrissy Younger had a very strong year. She averaged 82. 82 was her average round for the year. But again, if you're your number one, Kayla Ketchinson was the one. If you're Unger and you're the number one, you want that average down at about 78, 77 for an improving program. So she, to me, is the player to watch for next year.
She's got all summer to work on her game. I absolutely think this team's going to be fine next year. And let's just put it this way. Those 49 birdies on the season, by those 3 are 49 more birdies than I have in my career. So I definitely think this golf team, very young, they're going to be great next year and a couple years down the road. And I've seen a couple of them golf, and they're very talented. I would trade my golf skills any day of the week with them.
I think the combination of Chrissy Younger and Jen Whaley is going to be important for the Bobcats because they're on almost an even level on the golf course. Earlier in the season, we've seen them compete with each other. One day you'll see Jen Whaley in the lead. The next day you'll see Chris Younger in the lead for the team. So I think the two of them competing against each other in practice rounds and with the Bobcats, really trying to make each other better, is ultimately going to make the team better. So that competition really is what's going to help the Bobcats.
And then you always have Taylor Lambrew, too, who really stepped up her game towards the end of the year. And the Brown Bear Classic was one big thing for her. She improved her score a lot. So you have Unger, Whaley, and Lambrew to look forward to if you are Coach John O'Connor for next year. But when we come back, we'll have another lightning round, and this time there's a guaranteed new winner, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Bobcat Blitz. It's been a year to remember as a Quinnipiac sports fan, so for the lightning round, we're focusing on the year as a whole. Remember, 30 seconds per question, guys. First question is, outside of Eric Hartzell, who was the best athlete at Quinnipiac this year? Daly, you're going first.
Well, obviously, Eric Hartzell, if you take him out, you got to go with the other athlete of the year this year, Nicole Lewis. She had an absolutely phenomenal year. She kept this field hockey team in every single game that they played. She kept it really close against Monmouth, and they got shut out 3-0. She makes some saves that even Eric Hartzell couldn't make. She had an absolutely fantastic year. She's made upwards of 20 saves in a game, which is a lot for field hockey. She got named the NEC Goalkeeper of the Year. She, other than Eric Hartzell, is the best athlete on this campus.
I'm going to pick a different women's athlete. I'm going to pick Natalie Costco as the top athlete at this school this year because, as Jordan was talking about earlier, she has 85 points, I believe it was, for the season. And during the fall season, she outscored the opponents by herself. That's how good Quinnipiac was. Natalie Costco was able to outscore everybody else. And just the athleticism she has, the strength that she has, she's been able to literally run over the competition. So I think Natalie Costco is the best athlete on this campus outside of Eric Hartzell.
She also had 17 tries, which is very impressive to back you up. I'm going to make a different argument here. I'm going to argue that the best athlete was Kevin Bowie. And here's my argument. Without Kevin Bowie, Kev, you're loving this right now. Without Kevin Bowie, understand, Eric Hartzell was by far the best athlete, but without Kevin Bowie's 2 goals, this team does not make it past the first round of the NCAAs. They wound up winning 3 games, which was more games, by the way, than a bunch of other teams in the tournament and a bunch of other big-name programs. Without Kevin Bowie in that, with his 2 clutch goals, they don't get there. It's that simple. They don't get there, and that was the most important team on campus. Understand, all of your athletes were great, but Kevin Bowie may be the second most important athlete of this year.
I'm going to have to go with Kev on this one. You backed him up, and you said Nicole Lewis can make saves that Eric Hartzell can't. Come on now. Second question started with Kev. What team was your favorite team to watch this year?
I'm going to stick with women's rugby. They've been my favorite team to watch this year because they're heading out to California for the national semifinal, and they've really changed the way women's sports are on this campus. It's the only full contact sport in the NCAA for women. So I think they've done a lot to change the focus on this campus, and they've been able to really just dominate the competition. They've come back from behind when they're down here in the USA Rugby tournament. So this women's rugby team has been my favorite team to watch this year.
Very simple, guys. QU men's hockey. It's very simple. This team was ranked #1 in the country. To put that in perspective, some programs that have D1 schools that are big time in basketball and football and even hockey, Boston University, Notre Dame, Kentucky, North Carolina, Texas, LSU, Florida, none of them were ranked #1 in the country. Quinnipiac was. Quinnipiac had 3 tournament wins. That is more than Denver hockey, Minnesota hockey, Miami of Ohio hockey, and Wisconsin basketball and hockey combined, as well as Notre Dame basketball and hockey combined. Those are incredible numbers, not to mention the road trips we took to everywhere, and along with a lot of other Bobcat fans, all the games this year. To me, that's the most exciting team.
The question isn't what was the best team to watch. The question is what was your favorite team? And I had an absolute blast watching the field hockey team. I know no one is absolutely surprised that I said this. Nope. Getting to know this team, covering them throughout the year and in the offseason, writing some articles about them. They're great. They're not only great players, they're great people as well. It's a lot of fun to get to know these people. I got to know these girls. Some of them are some of my best friends. So they are an absolute pleasure to watch play. I had a great time covering them, and I'm absolutely looking forward to do it again next year.
As much as I love field hockey, I think I have to go with Kev with this one too. I think he's the only one that explained why that was his favorite team to watch. So regardless, Kev's going to win this, but we're going to ask the final question anyway. What was your favorite moment of the year in athletics?
Guys, it was the road trips. It was the road trips with everyone. I thought that was to me the most fun. I enjoyed going to just watch the hockey team, but just to be with everyone, to be with all the Quinnipiac fans, that was to me the best moment.
The road trips were great, but I think the best moment this year was St. Patrick's Day. The women's basketball team wins the NEC tournament, and then the men's hockey team, thrilling double overtime win against Cornell. My last memory of the TD Bank Sports Center this year was it going absolutely crazy as Kevin Bowie wins it in double overtime. That day stands out to me above all others.
That particular moment really stood out to me when Kevin Bowie scored that game-winning double overtime goal. Just to see him streaking down the ice, you could see the play develop as he scored on our side of the ice. You could just see the play develop, and when you see it develop that way, you really just get really excited. And when the puck finally goes in the back of the net, you're able to let loose. And I know all of us were just jumping around and screaming at the top of our lungs after we saw the goal light up, and the rest is history.
All right, I'm going to have to give that one to Daly. It was the first time to say it. And as I just said, Kev had won the first two, so Kev, you get your 15 seconds of FaceTime.
Wow, this is an honor to win the last show of the spring semester. So I'm just looking forward to what we're going to have in store next year. And just want to thank Mark and Matthias and Brian Farrell for all their work, the senior class, and then Neil Rabin this year, Gil Salea. And unfortunately, we get Mike Morjese back for next year, but we'll deal with him as the year goes along.
All right, that ends another year of Bobcat Blitz. Thanks for joining us, and remember to follow @QBSN on Twitter and go to theqbsn.com, as well as @Q30 Sports on Twitter, and check out q30.org. Have a great finals week in summer, and we'll see you next year.